Is it possible to connect with anybody at all and have a conversation that enriches our lives? I'm Andrew Riis, and welcome to the experiment. This is Hello Stranger. Each episode is a conversation, nothing more, nothing less, with someone that is or used to be a stranger. I am so excited for you to hear this conversation with Stephen. I met him at a random Yes Theory community event in a tiny apartment in Montreal, Canada about 1 year ago. We instantly clicked. We did something random called eye gazing the first night we met, and since then we've done a bunch of social impact projects together. Here's what you're in for. Yeah, man. There's some kid right now in Arkansas. Maybe he's 10, or maybe he's 20, maybe 30, 40, 50, 60. You can pick whatever age you want, but you get to impact him in some way. And what does that impact look like, and what does it mean to you, and why do you care about it?
Okay, so to me, what that looks like is that person running up to you with the biggest smile on their face and giving you the biggest hug and the most lovable hug ever. That's impact. That is someone who is literally willing to, you've changed them so much in such a positive way that they're willing to give you something so intimate. They're essentially like giving their whole body, all their energy towards you in their thank you, which is a hug. But not just any hug, like a hug, you know, when you meet someone, but a real hug. Like I'm talking about a hug where you squeeze and you smile and you dig your face into the other person's shoulder. To me, that's impact. Like, you know, you've made a difference in that person's life when they come to you with that sort of emotion.
I'm going to pass over to Richard for a quick disclaimer, and then we'll get right into it.
If you want to listen to a super entertaining, brief podcast, this probably isn't for you. But if you're ready to embark on a journey to see the world through the lens of a stranger, hello.
Where I want to start is that fateful night where I've been in Montreal, Canada for 6 months, and you know, there's this Yes Theory community, and I see an event, and it's kind of a relatively cold day. There's kind of maybe a bit of like mushy snow on the ground, and I really didn't feel like going, but I just felt like, man, I really need to go to this, and rock up, and I see you, and it's funny, I don't think I've ever told you this, but the part of me that's very much like super competitive almost felt challenged by you in some way because of all the cool stuff you've done in LA. I was like, yeah, there was a part of me that was thinking, man, this guy's crazy. This guy's so cool. I was thinking that maybe I could help lead some of the stuff. And I kind of snapped out of that pretty quick. That was just the ego response. And I was just like, oh man, this dude is so cool. He's doing all this cool stuff. And I just like the way you saw the world. I found at McGill, it was really hard to find people that saw the world the way I did, or at least people that not only saw it that way, but were actually living it. And yeah, man, like I'm so happy I met you, genuinely,
dude. And it's crazy. I think we're crawling up on or I think we just passed the 1 year anniversary very recently, or it's either like today or soon or something. I've been checking my Facebook regularly because usually it'll like give you like like a friend anniversary, and I haven't had ours pop up yet, but I think it's really soon that we met 1 year ago. And our adventures started from there. I remember it was the beginning of April, and it is the beginning of April now when we're recording this. So, dude, I remember where I was sitting and where you were sitting. Like you were like sitting on the ground on like that left-hand side. And I honestly like don't even remember what we talked about as a group, to be honest. But the thing that like sticks out the most for me was like, when everyone gets out, those four of us left, and you go, hey, have you ever heard of eye gazing? And then like just down that rabbit hole of, so Andrew introduced us to this concept called eye gazing, which, you know what, Andrew, you'll do a much better job at explaining it. So why don't you go ahead and do that?
Yeah, it's literally just, looking into someone else's eyes for a period of time, normally a couple of minutes, and the only rule is you can't look away. So you can laugh, cry, blink, do whatever you want, but the focus is on just being present with the other person. And kind of really, really impacted you, right? You kind of struggled to talk for
like a solid 2 minutes after. So we did it for I guess around like, it wasn't that long, but I don't know why, but I was so determined to like stare into your eyes and like just, it was so powering that I became speechless. And as corny as it sounds and as cliche as it sounds, it's literally what happened. Like after they're like, "Oh, so how'd you feel?" And I was just like, and the words weren't coming out of my mouth. And I think one of the funniest things that you said was, that's never happened before. And in my head, I'm like, wait, what? What do you mean that's never happened before? I was freaking out a little bit because it's never happened. That no one's ever made me maybe speechless like that. And I think that's, we bonded like crazy over that. And from there, we just, I remember that night I drove you back to your dorm. And I remember after I dropped you off, you slammed the door, and I was like, "Damn, that's a cool dude." And I just knew that we were gonna continue to go on adventures together. And we literally just, I believe like even just like either that night or the next day, we already like started with all the brainstorming and just hit the ground running and never looked back since then.
Yeah, literally we did. And culminating in that event where we brought together the strangers was really special. But I think what worked really well between us is that you brought the whole, like, I don't really care at all. I'll just like literally do anything. Almost bordering on being reckless. Whereas I was, wasn't too fussed about what other people thought, but I was maybe a bit more strategic some of the time. And so we kind of pulled each other in really good directions. And it was a really interesting balance. I felt like we complemented each other's skill sets, but also just personalities. Exactly.
Like you're saying, it was kind of like this constant like tug and pull, but it always ended up like meeting in the middle where it was supposed to be. And that's what made us accomplish everything that we accomplished, was just the right amount of, almost like Goldilocks style of just enough, just go with the flow, but at the same time with like a brainstorming period beforehand. And I think that was what worked out for us. Is I remember like we'd sit down to do something, and like that strategic planning phase was like, you were in charge there. You were like, okay, like, this is what I have in mind. So what we should do, what are your thoughts on that? And then I'd go, okay, yeah, that, no, not that. And then we kind of like come to a happy median, and then just go full send and conquer anything that we wanted, whether it was the hugs in public, the dinner party, in the end, the strangers and juniors thing. And it was just, oh, dude, I'm getting like crazy, like reminiscent memories right now of us just like going through, like just doing everything. It was crazy. And I, for those listening, the craziest part is this all, we did all these things within like 90, like, no, not 90, like within like less than 2 months. And we just, and it felt like such a long time, but when I look back to it, that was such a short part of the year. Like it was really realistically just April and May. But I felt I've grown so much since then and during that period as a human, and I've learned so much from you and you have from me. And then we had to go our own separate ways, but I've never and I will never forget all the things I learned in that experiences, and it's brought me to who I am today. And dude, I just can't wait till we do something like that again, to be honest, man, because like I miss it.
Yeah, I miss it too. I'm surprised how emotional I feel right now, even just talking about it. And I think at a logical level, like I really love the fact what you're saying, that it wasn't too long, because it's amazing how much life you can cram into a short period of time when you live with a high level of intensity and just let yourself like be alive. But yeah, I'm kind of wrestling with like why do I feel so strongly about this, and that's what's kind of going on for me right now. And I think it's this idea of letting go of the rules and just having fun and playing like a kid, but playing with people that you just enjoy doing things with. I think that's a big part of it, and maybe there's other parts of it that I can't necessarily explain with language, where it just kind of felt right.
Yeah, it was. It was like constant euphoria, essentially. Like, I'm sure there were some rougher times in those months, but to be honest, I don't remember them at all. Like, everything bad that happened to me during that time was completely nullified because I always had our experiences or our next adventure to look forward to. And I think that's some of the things that I've been struggling with more recently, where I wasn't in this zone where I was constantly like, go, 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 and like cramming as much experience as I can within a short period amount of time. And I think part of it is because we knew our time together in that experience was finite, because you were going to go back to Australia at the time. And so it kind of lit a fire under us to go, okay, we're going to have to do all this, everything that we talked about within this period of time, and screw it. Let's just try to do all of it. And the more, it's interesting because when I think back to some of my most memorable experiences in LA, funny enough, it's from when I was visiting here and not actually when I moved here. Because when I moved here, I was like, oh, okay, I have 6 months. Like, I have all this time in the world. Whereas all the other times when I visited here, I usually only had 5 days. And when you put yourself, when you kind of have a deadline, your body, I guess, or your mind tells you to just go full send and don't worry about the, I guess, the consequences and the fatigue, because, you only have so much time, make the most out of it. And it's interesting to see, because then I ask myself, like, if I technically do have time, all the time in the world, then should I set myself artificial time constraints that'll train my brain to have that same euphoria, when in reality there's no actual physical time constraint, like, you're leaving or something like that.
Yeah, and the question that I've often wrestled with is, how far out can we extend those time constraints? You see videos like the ones Yes Theory does of, you have 24 hours to live. Well, obviously it wasn't life then, but it was like, okay, cool, we have this time period, and I wonder what we can do together in this time period. But the reality is life is finite, and I wonder at what point does someone's answer to the question, what would you do for the rest of your life? Or sorry, what would you do if you had 3 months to live? At what point does that 24 hours turn into 1 week, turn into, say, 3 months, turn into the rest of your life? Because we really don't know how long we're going to live.
It's true. And I guess it's a mix, right? Like, I guess you can call it phases. That's what I've been, because now I'm in a grind phase. I'm focusing a lot on work. I'm not really focusing on going on adventures. And at the time we're recording this, COVID-19 is at its all-time high. So it's not like you can go on many adventures physically, but you still can virtually, like we are doing it right now. And I'm so happy that we're doing this. But it's so interesting, because I find it so difficult for a normal person to balance the grind when, people like you and I have that drive for entrepreneurship. We want to do that. Like, as much as we want to go on adventures, I remember all the conversations we had about, I really want to start a startup, and I really want to put in, 80 hours, and I want to sit down and create something and make money off of it and eventually sell it. Right. And I still haven't figured out how to manage when to go on the adventures, and when to just sit down and have to pass on some adventures to focus on your grind. Right. Because it's just, I think the biggest takeaway I have of this is, I'm so glad that both of us aren't in school, because I feel like, and I was thinking about this a lot as I was working today, is entrepreneurship is something that should be learned but not studied. And what I mean by that is it's something that should be experienced hands-on. It's something that should be learned on the go, where you throw yourselves in the wolf's den, where instead of doing entrepreneurship by the book in like a classroom setting. And I feel like we're doing that in more ways than one right now, not just in an entrepreneurship type of way, but also in a way that we're by not being in school right now, by not being tied down by what society thinks we should do and what I guess you can say the rational thing is to do, we're giving ourselves the opportunity to go on these adventures. Yeah, it's crazy.
Yeah, I also find it interesting that we're getting older. I don't know about you, but for me, man,
Shit, dude,
I'm 22.
22.
I know. It feels so much older than
I'm going to be 22 soon too.
And, you know, I know we're ridiculously young, and people like Gary talk about patience and all that. But yeah, man, like I feel a lot older than I did at 16, 17. And you know what it is? I think a big part of it is almost maturity, in the sense of learning lessons that maybe aren't true, where maybe I've worked on projects or tried things or done experiments where something hasn't worked out, and maybe I've overlearned from that failure. And look, I don't mean to be hard on myself. I mean, I've done some really beautiful things and really fun things, but I guess I'm saying all this to say that the times when I felt happiest and most alive were A, the times that I was really connected to the people around me, but B, the times that I was operating in a state of play and just having fun. And I think in terms of what you're saying around adventures, I mean, yes, there are times when you need to sit down and nut out like a big sales proposal or whatever that looks like for you. But the times when you can integrate the two, when you can have the play and the work be one, right? Like there's that beautiful quote, "A master in the art of living knows no distinction between work and play. Rather, he lets everyone else guess what one he's doing at any given moment in time." I feel like that's a big inspiration between, how I'm trying to live my life.
Yeah, I understand that a lot. And it's actually what exactly I'm going for too. Part of me wants to sit down and grind now, because the way I say it is like, okay, I'm 21 now, soon I'll be 22. If I could grind now for let's say, I don't know, a year, 2 years, 3 years, however long it takes, if I could be financially independent for the rest of my life by 25 years old, then I'm like, shit, I'd be pretty happy with that, right? But at the same time, I'm like, wait a second, I'm 21 years old now, right? This will be the last time I'm ever 21 years old. So how do I want to remember being 21 years old, right? How do I want to remember being 22 years old? And for me, it's exactly what you've touched on. I've always wanted to integrate work with play in some shape or form. Personally, for me, it would be in a way that it's more passive rather than active. What I mean by that is like, you set something up that'll generate you passive income, in a sense that it is hands-on for a certain amount of hours in a week, but not a lot of hours in a week, right? It's where something you can go home and do at night, and then during the day you could play, but while you're playing, you're still making an income. And so that's always been the goal I've been personally striving for, where I know that when I finally achieve that, I will all the stresses I have now in my life will be gone. But we're human, so I'm sure that as soon as those stresses are all gone, my brain will strum up some other stresses to conquer.
Yeah, that's always how it goes. And, I started off just trying to make a bunch of money, and then shifted into how can I really make impact? And I'm still working out what my life will look like from a financial perspective. I think I'm very likely to head down the path where my finances and my work and play are completely congruent, where instead of having some sort of passive income, I just build stuff around what I love. And one of the things I've realized even just the past few days, as I kind of have slowed down with coronavirus, is how much I love entrepreneurship for its own sake. It's fun. It's a game. So we'll see. I may end up down the path of working on something that's super profitable and then having a couple of days a week where I can adventure and travel. But I don't know. I feel really, really called, really like I want to adventure more in the next period of my life. You know, I have the US trip idea. I also had this idea of doing a micro version of that trip, but with a roll of toilet paper, where I went from Bondi to Byron with one roll of toilet paper, kind of as a satirical thing, joking about how people take toilet paper and how funny that was, but at a deeper level of, you know, these ideas of community and connection, as opposed to kind of like fighting over basic necessities. That unfortunately, I had to pull the plug on that just because of how fast coronavirus was accelerating in Australia. But yeah, I really want to do adventures, but then equally I love projects. So I'm keen to see how the next phase of my life takes shape. And I guess, man, during this time of coronavirus, I'm really taking advantage of it to slow down, to reflect, to take in all I've learned and experienced the past couple of years. Your question around the biggest lessons I've learned in the past 3 years, 3 months, and 3 weeks was a really insightful one. Dude, let's talk about risk, because that's one of the things when I look at the differences between you and me that I respect most about you, and that I think I've tried to absorb the most from. And I mean, we've got kind of your journey with university, but what I'm more interested in talking about is actually kind of your view of this whole trip to LA and finding a way to build a business and make it sustainable. And I remember, you know, a couple of conversations ago, I was just sitting in my car looking over the beach, and you were talking about this whole idea of, I'm just going to work hard now, and you know, if push comes to shove and I lose a bunch of money, I can move back home, and then I'll save up, and then I'll have a go at another thing. And if I fail, that's fine. And each time I iterate, each time I'll learn something, and eventually it'll work out. Talk about whatever comes to mind when I just kind of said all of that.
Yeah, so I'll give you a really good example, actually, of something that I don't think I had talked to you about, but I did recently. I actually slept in my car, like overnight in the like someone who doesn't have a home. I basically what I did was I just took my laptop, which is all I need for work, my phone, I packed a bag of clothes, and I basically hit the road for 4 days, and I slept in my car. And the reason I did that was because I wanted to see how I felt while sleeping in the car, which is one, illegal in LA. You're not actually allowed to sleep in your car in LA. So you, that's part of it. And B, it was interesting to see how, what I mean by how I felt in that situation was based on how I was before. So like before I had, you know, university, stable job, stuff like that. And I remember as it was 3 a.m, I was parked on some ghetto side street, and I'm in the back of the car. I'm cramped up. I'm 6'2". I don't fit easily lying down in the back of a car. I'm cramped up. I have a blanket, a pillow. And I was just sitting there, and I was like, man, do I rather be in this exact situation where I'm right now, where, I'm simulating that I have no money. I just have a laptop, a phone, and creativity and drive? Or do I rather have back at home Montreal, my bed, my job, my stability, a full bank account and stuff like that? And as cramped as it was, as uncomfortable as it was to sleep in your car and it's cold and you're scared and, you have to get creative because, there's no toilet in your car. Where do you go to the washroom? These challenges like this that you have to conquer. And yet I still rather do that than go back to a life of comfort where everything was stable. And that's when I knew that I was A, in the right place, and B, that I'm comfortable with taking the amount of risk that I take. Because to me, I know that I eventually will succeed. It's just a matter of when. So I know that if I keep on getting up after I get knocked down, because I will get knocked down, I make mistakes. I'm not a perfect human. And so I know I will fail, and I've accepted that. And because I've accepted failure as a building block to success, I know that when I put enough blocks together, then I will have built an empire, a mountain, a tower, whatever it is. And I'll have something that I could back up and look at and be like, well, look at how I built this amazing structure from all these failures. And that's what motivates me to keep going. And that's why I'm okay to take the risk, because inevitably for me, in my brain, I know that in the long term, I won't fail. So I will fail along the way, but I won't not be ever able to do it. I've convinced myself that. That's how my brain operates. Does that answer your question?
Totally. And when you say you've convinced yourself of that and that's how your brain operates, what does that mean for you? Because for me, you sharing this now feels very different to the Steven, the Edvi that I first met a year ago. What's shifted? Because I think it's deeper than just a simple mind thing.
So one of the biggest things that's shifted was back then I actually had all the stability in my life. I still had my job. I still was living at home for free. And now I'm in the wolves den. I have to pay rent. I'm on my own. My parents have made it very clear that they will not support me. They will be there to as a fallback. If I need to go home, I'll always have a place to go back home to. But I'm on my own when it comes to financing my adventures and my projects. And as I'm sitting here in this spot, financially, I'm not in the same spot I was last year. However, I'm totally cool with where I am. And what I mean by that is I'm okay with all the struggles I currently have, and I like it, and I want more, because for me, the opportunity cost of where I was and where I am now, I would choose this 100% of the time. But back then I didn't actually know that. I still had a lot of doubt, right? Because I had my stability. There's always like what if you postpone your trip by 1 year? What if you save up, just a little bit more money? What if you choose to do this instead, right? You always have that doubt. But now, since I've already thrown myself in the deep end, I've already lived this experience. And now I could definitely say that I'd rather do this 100 times over rather than going back.
Yeah, you've kind of tested it.
I've lived. Yeah, I've experienced it. That's the difference now is I've actually lived through the risk and the doubt that was originally just a thought. I've actually experienced it now, and I've conquered it, and I'm working on it. And that's I guess the main thing that changes. Now that I'm in the situation, I found myself okay with the situation I'm in. And that's I guess how my mindset has changed.
That's beautiful. I love it, because it's almost as if you're free to fail now, because not only have you thought about, okay, cool, and done an exercise like Tim Ferriss talks about fear setting and looking at the worst case scenario, you've actually decided, like with the car example, to live out the worst case scenario. And you've decided, well, actually, this worst case scenario, I actually still prefer that from living my nice, comfortable life. So therefore, I'm going to go all in. And if I need to go back home and live with my parents for a bit and save up a bit of money, so be it. But then I'll have another go and another go.
And even if and the reason I did the car thing was I understand that not everyone is as blessed as I am with a caring family to fall back on. So one of the things my colleagues at the bank were telling me before I left was, the only reason you could do this is because your family supports you as a plan B. You have something to fall back on. The people who don't have anything to fall back on will not take this risk because they don't have that plan B. And that bugged me. I was like, damn, I don't want, I want everyone to be able to experience what I'm experiencing and everyone to have the courage to take the risk that I'm taking. And so I said, screw that. I'm going to throw myself into the situation where someone who doesn't have, I'm going to take away the support I have. I'm going to take away my plan B. And then I'm going to make an educated decision based on if I didn't have that plan B, how I feel. And that's exactly what I did. Right. So it was so interesting because I remember I was like, okay, like you have no money, except for like I can't remember how much I budgeted, but like it was something ridiculously low, like something like you got to try to live off of like $4 a day or like whatever it was. And so like I would literally be starving myself while crunching on my laptop, and just figuring out ways to live. And what's beautiful is that the human body will adapt to pretty much any situation that it's thrown into. So automatically, all these things that I quote unquote need in everyday life, well, I don't actually need in everyday life, because when that's taken away from you, you completely forget about it. You know, like whether it was TV or any or YouTube or stuff like that. I deleted social media at the time too. I just removed everything and put myself really at the bare bones to understand what it is to be a human who doesn't have access to everything that I have. And I still found myself in a spot going, okay, you know what? This sucks right now in a sense, right? It's not very comfortable, but in retrospect and compared to what I had before, I rather do this because I can adapt and I know that I can succeed. So I guess the thing that I would give as advice to someone listening to this is, if you want to be an entrepreneur, then you have to convince yourself that you will succeed. You will fail. So you can't be a perfectionist, right? You can't tell yourself that, oh, I'm going to, nail it on the first try. And you can't make your product perfect, right? So like if you always strive for perfection, then you could actually fail out, because you'll never be completely perfect. But if you accept failure that you learn, that you will learn from, and that you accept that through enough failure you will eventually succeed, then in my opinion any human could do what I'm doing now.
Yeah, totally. And every time you talk about stuff like this, I just get completely mesmerized, because I think of how much you've grown in the past year. I think it was a long time ago when you were asking me like what is an entrepreneur and like what is a social entrepreneur, and now you just speak the language. You're in the thick of it.
It's funny though, because I still don't consider myself an entrepreneur. Like when people ask me like, well, okay, so like what do you do? Like, oh, okay, like I run my own business. Oh, so you're an entrepreneur. Well, I don't know if I call myself an entrepreneur. Like I don't know, for me personally, there's this like weird stigma with entrepreneurs that like puts a lot of pressure on you. Like I find when you say the word entrepreneur, they expect you to be a successful entrepreneur, not an aspiring entrepreneur or a failed entrepreneur. And so that I'm still struggling with that personally. But I've known for a very long time that this is the career path I wanted to take, but I definitely did not ever think growing up or in high school or even in the early stages of university still that it would A, come this early, and B, come in this sort of way. Right. And it's funny because that has to do with expectations, where I am now a firm believer that you shouldn't have any expectations essentially for pretty much anything. Going in with a blank slate is the best thing you could do, because that's, in my experience, where the best adventures have come from. And even as I was driving home to record this podcast, I was like, oh, what if Andrew asked me this question? What's my answer going to be for that? If he asked me this, what am I going to answer that? And I went, okay, stop it, Stephen. Like, rewind, cut it out, stop it. Like, no expectations. Go in there with a blank slate and you're going to have an awesome time regardless.
Love it. And I want to come back to what you said a little bit earlier, which was about you have to believe that you're going to succeed in the end. And it reminds me of this quote from Steve Jobs, which I love, which is, I'm paraphrasing here, but you have to trust in something, whether it's God, whether it's your gut, whether it's destiny, whether it's karma, because that's what gives you courage to follow your heart, especially when it leads you off the well-worn path. And for me, you definitely are someone that's off the well-worn path. And dude, I just see so much of myself in you. Like the past few minutes when you're speaking, it feels like I just got a mirror up and, we don't have a video on, but I feel like we just got a mirror up. So dude, my question is, like Steve Jobs, when he's talking about heading off the well-worn path and he's talking about trusting that the dots connect is what gives you the courage to follow your heart. I know you have a massive heart and you care about people so much and so deeply. How connected do you feel to your heart with how you're living your life now?
I'm doing exactly what my heart wants to be doing. And so okay. So what I mean by that is so like I am living how I am following my heart, full stop. I am following my ambitions and my dreams, and I'm following my heart instinct and my gut, instinct as well. There are obviously difficult times where, you're like, oh man, like what if I was doing exactly this, but I had, $5 million and stuff like that. But I know I trust the process, right? And I don't see myself doing anything else right now. And the fact that I don't see myself doing anything else right now is what tells me I'm following exactly what my heart wants to do. Like, I remember when I was at the bank every single day where, I was in my office. Yeah, I had my name on the door and it was super cool. But I remember sitting there and just like being like, shit, man, I'd rather be here. I'd rather be doing that. I'd rather be doing something else. And I don't have those thoughts anymore. I really don't. Like, I really rather be exactly where I am right now. I don't even feel like traveling right now. And that's been one of my crazy realizations that I've realized, where I'm a super travel-oriented person. People who know me know that I love to travel and I love meeting new people and discovering new cultures and going on adventures that are outside of your city and outside your country and on a completely different continent. But when I made the sacrifice to move here, I told myself that one of those sacrifices will be to give up the ability to travel because of the current visa situation I'm on. But I'm totally cool with that. Like, and that's what tells me how that what I'm doing now is what I should be doing, because I'm completely okay with giving up all the other necessities that I had in my life, all the other wants I had in my life in favor of this. And I have no doubts. I don't have doubtful thoughts anymore about, am I doing the right thing? I'm confident that I am doing the right thing. And if I don't have any doubts, then to me, the only explanation is that my brain and my heart are singing together, right? They're doing a duet. It's not like they're doing their own things. They're in harmony and they're working together. And that's what motivates me to crunch at what I'm doing, because I know that I am where I'm supposed to be. Like, I feel in a way, I guess you could use the word comfortable, but not in like a comfort sense, but in a way that I have that doubt is no longer in my brain about, am I doing the right thing? I know I'm doing the right thing. I feel it and I believe it.
For me, the word that comes up is congruent, where you're congruent in terms of your heart and what you care about, and like your brain and how you're approaching life. And because of that, you become an ally, where instead of you become an ally for yourself, where instead of being in a job you hate and then your mind's like, yeah, this is fine, like logically it makes sense, and then your heart or your gut instinct is like, yeah, no, something doesn't feel right here. You've got both on the same page where they can work together. And because of that, it's just so much easier to grow quickly.
Yeah.
I think that's part of the reason you've grown so quickly, and you move through life at a rapid pace. And what I find with you is whenever you enter like a new arena or a new field or a new anything, you tend to learn and pick up things really quickly because you don't have any baggage in the way of doing what you need to do, and you just kind of flow through things.
Yeah. It's crazy how much more efficient it is when your heart and your brain work at the same time. like you said, like how much faster you can learn as an individual. And you will still make mistakes, and you will still fail, and you will still have your rough days. But in hindsight, in the long run, it's way more efficient than sitting making crazy money at your 9 to 5, but your brain is somewhere else, or your heart, sorry, is somewhere else. And it's starting to get crazy now because I have today's April 6, 2020. I have about 1 month and 2 weeks before my adventure ends here. So my 6 months will be up. At the beginning, I was like, oh, okay, you know what? I'm gonna move back home. No rent, save some more money. Something is safer. But now, like, I actually found a sublet for an apartment, and I'm just gonna go harder into the deep end and just be like, I'm gonna make this work. Like, it's not the smart thing to do because I'm not making crazy money right now, but I'm confident that I will be eventually. And so because of that, I'm just taking on actually more and more risk now, where like, I'm like, man, how am I going to pay for the airplane ticket for Thailand? For example, right? That we're visiting Thailand in August, and I haven't bought the airfare yet. And so one of the things I think about is like, shit, how am I going to pay for that? And I'm like, I'll figure it out. Like, it's definitely not how I used to think. It's funny because as much as I'm more strategic now in the decisions I make, I'm even more go with the flow. And I feel like I've become smarter, but I've become more relaxed, and I'm also open to taking more risk. So I've not only grown in the sense that I now calculate what risks to take, but when I think about what takes how many risks I take now compared to what I used to, I'm doing both. I'm doing more of both, which is crazy because that's not something I thought would happen. I thought it would be okay, either more strategic or more risk, but somehow I ended up doing both at the same time.
Yeah, it's so cool. Like I just love it, and I love how much you embody a lot of things that I'm working on and trying to live, and I'm sure vice versa.
Well, that's what I was going to ask. Like, tell me more about your side of that. So, like, how does your heart feel versus your brain right now? Are they congruent?
Oh, dude, so good. My heart feels really good with this idea of this Conversations podcast. And I don't know fully what is about. I know I love the conversations with people. I don't know fully exactly what it is. I can't exactly put a finger on it that I love about it so much. And I don't know where it's going to go. It's still taking shape. Haven't even clarified a vision statement because I just want to do a bunch of episodes and then see what feels right. Do you even have a name for it yet? I think I'm literally going to call it Conversations.
Perfect.
And that feels so good. And at the same time, I felt like I was really busy and really frantic, especially at the start of coronavirus stuff, and constantly checking the news on social media for no reason. Like, I really, really into Reddit in Australia and the Reddit's coronavirus stuff. Yeah, dude, pretty dangerous. And it's interesting because I thought, I was like, all right, cool. I'm like really okay with how I'm living my life. But then when I slowed down, when I really looked at how I was using technology and changed that, I started feeling all these things that I hadn't felt in a little while. And I felt like I was better able to connect with myself and look at what do I really want with my life. And during this period of slowing down, it makes me crave being around other young people more. And it makes me crave being on adventures more. And I know that part of those parts of my life will definitely be really important and continue. And I definitely still want to do my US trip in some form where I'm traveling through connecting with people. And at a logical level, I think my brain's doing pretty well. I'm kind of happy with this idea, right? Because it seems to make sense on so many levels. So I'm doing something fun for its own sake. It's nice to be able to block a certain amount of time where it's like, okay, cool. All I need to do during this time is chat to Steven and we'll just see where that goes. And I don't need to worry about any other distractions. And it's also good for me to practice my ability to connect with people and see how deep I can get them to go and to have conversations, because a big part of my love of people and anthropology and what drives some of the stuff in terms of my US trip, for example, is I want to be able to interview people and to understand the way they view the world, and to take some of the people that are so kind and caring and compassionate and view the world from a sake of a collective and a group. And yeah, sorry, you want to say something?
Well, I was just gonna ask for those of the people listening who are not familiar, what is your US trip about?
Yeah, what is my US trip about? It's about exploring different norms for human beings, about taking some of the base level assumptions we have about I'm just a single person. Maybe I live with my family. Maybe I have a partner, but I'm just my own person, living my life, doing my own thing. And it's weird to help out strangers, and it's weird to just randomly connect with people. And so it's about coming back to what are the underlying norms for how we operate as human beings, and thinking about, okay, cool, like what's the context of that? Is that about just getting by and selfishness, which I think it's so easy to mistake the human nature as one of being selfish, when actually it's really selfless and collaborative and community based. And logistically, what that looks like is traveling for 3 months, relying entirely on the kindness of strangers for food, accommodation, and transport, where I'm getting people to help me and connecting with them and experimenting with what happens when I let go of these norms I have in my head about how the world works and just assume that the world's a friendly place. So that's what the US trip is about.
Yeah, dude, I'm so excited. But what I just find is funny is like the idea sounds so ludicrous now because of what's going on in the world. Like, it's crazy to think that a year ago we were giving hugs to people, random strangers in the metro, and now like today, literally, I drove past Walmart and there's a line going around the block because there has to be like a 10-foot distance between each person. Everyone's got a mask on. I've been yelled at for apparently standing too close to somebody now. And it's crazy to think how much things have changed. But I strongly believe that once this blows over, it's going to bring humans closer together because they're going to be irking for that connection after 100%. Such a long detox.
People, I feel like the opportunity to do things like the US trip is going to be stronger than ever. I feel like people are likely to be more warm and friendly and welcoming because there'll be a new novelty in terms of connection that maybe hasn't existed for a period of time. So yeah, man, that's the US trip. And yeah, mentally I'm doing kind of well. And I'm my work with Digital Storytellers, which is a really cool storytelling nonprofit I'm working with, is going really well, and I'm really loving it. I've done some pretty cool stuff that's helped us kind of sustain through this period of time. But yeah, man, I feel pretty congruent. And the big thing that's led to that has been looking at my relationship with technology and really slowing down. And that's why I'm keen to use this time to tune in and connect with myself and look at what do I want to do? What do I want to create? And then get into that. And, you know, of course, the thing around like money and what do I love and how does that all fit together is still an unknown, but I'm not too fussed about that now, man. Like I'm doing really well. I'm really enjoying life.
Not having that stress is something that's so vital, I find, because then when you don't have the stress, you usually don't have the doubt as well, right? And so you're just kind of comfortable with how things are going. And like, as I explained before, it's like, you're just like, oh yeah, like I'll get there no matter what.
Yeah.
And I don't know when, maybe tomorrow, maybe next year, but I'll get there. And I'm okay with that.
And I don't even know what there is fully. I know I love doing things with people, and I know that I have a feeling just from this conversation we're having now that the next big project I start, I feel like I want to co-found it with someone or have a couple of people working on it together as opposed to being a solo founder, because so much of the fun for me isn't just the results, but the relationships and the journey.
Sharing it with somebody.
Having someone, right, exactly. So, I mean, there's that, but yeah, I'm kind of chilling right now, man, but in a really good way. I'm keen to go really deep on this podcast stuff, and there's so many different seeds I could be planting, so many different ideas I have even beyond this and within this, like because of how I guess, generic this almost is, and how really I feel like I could have conversations with anybody and just dig up gold and just listen to them and try to understand them. I mean, there's dozens and dozens and dozens of people I already know, let alone from people I don't know, that I'd be keen to do this with.
Yeah.
So the way I kind of
so great.
the way I try to navigate that is just like feel into like, all right, what feels right? And like, what's my gut sense of who I want to talk to next, as opposed to just like being overwhelmed by how many different ways it could go and how different it could look. And that's that whole trust thing. And
trust the process. Hell yeah.
Yeah, and trust yourself, man. You have to trust yourself at a deep level for sure.
Dude.
And I'm leaning into that more. Yeah.
You know what I just thought about? And I actually had a vision of this not too long ago. So I have my like laptop set up with like our audio recording, and there's my name, your name together. And I don't know why, and I don't even know what we would even talk about, but like about a couple of weeks ago, I just imagined you and I giving a TED talk to like all these people. And it was just like the most awesome, funniest, best experience ever, where we were just like, you know, it was like serious, and I don't even know what we were going to talk about or what we were talking about when it was in my brain, but it was such a awesome experience, even though like, I don't know if it was foreshadowing or whatever it is, but seeing my name next to your name with all these like audio things going by just makes me like see this like bigger picture where like we talk about impact and not just talking about impact, but actually making impact, right? Like on people and changing all the listeners. Yeah. Because I remember you told me that you had a feeling that you're gonna give your first tech talk before. Oh man, was it end of last year or was it the end of this year?
Maybe it was. Was it the end of last year? Was it? I don't know.
I think you said something like by December, but I don't know if you meant this like 2019 or December 2020.
I think I might have meant 2019. I remember because I posted an Instagram story because I was down in Adelaide with my friend who was doing a TED talk right after I go back to Sydney. You actually helped me get down to Adelaide.
I completely forgot about that.
Yeah. I don't know, but dude, I love it 100%. I really love working with you, and I love the way you see the world and the way you understand the world and the way you crystallize things. And yeah, maybe we can talk about impact, because I'm keen to get your view on what impact looks like, because it's a word that's thrown around so much. And I feel like a lot of the time people that jump into impact do it for the sake of obligation. I know at least I did personally when I felt like I ought to make an impact, as opposed to now where I feel like there's nothing that I necessarily have to do and I feel free to do what I want. And impact is what I've come back to, but for the fun of it and for its own sake. So how do we want to approach this? Okay, I'm going to go with my window analogy. So there's some kid, and I can't go with New York right now because they're being really badly impacted with coronavirus. So let's talk about another city. Some kid in, I don't know, Arkansas, or I think is that a city?
That's
Arkansas?
A state. Just say, you mean Arkansas?
Okay, Arkansas. There's some, yeah, man. There's some kid right now in Arkansas. Maybe he's 10, or maybe he's 20, maybe 30, 40, 50, 60. You can pick whatever age you want, but you get to impact him in some way. And what does that impact look like, and what does it mean to you, and why do you care about it?
Okay, so to me, what that looks like is that person running up to you with the biggest smile on their face and giving you the biggest hug and the most lovable hug ever. That's impact. That is someone who is literally willing to, like, you've changed them so much in such a positive way that they're willing to give you something so intimate. They're essentially like giving their whole body, all their energy towards you in their thank you, which is a hug. But not just any hug, like a hug, you know, when you meet someone, but a real hug. Like I'm talking about a hug where you squeeze and you smile and you dig your face into the other person's shoulder. To me, that's impact. Like, you know, you've made a difference in that person's life when they come to you with that sort of emotion. That's always what I imagine is like you're standing there with the biggest grin on your face and this person running up to you all excited and just like throwing their arms around you and just being like, oh my God, like, wow, like my heart and together your heart beat together at that point. Actually, it's pretty interesting. I don't know if you've known that, but when you hug somebody, your heart rates tend to like kind of work congruently, I guess we could say. So to me, that's impact. That's how I envision it. And in my past experiences, whenever I've impacted someone or a group of people, that's always how they've expressed it to me in the deepest way possible. You know, it's one thing to get a thank you and a handshake from somebody, but when somebody literally throws themselves on you and squeezes hard and digs their face into your shoulder, then you really feel that you've changed that person forever.
I love it.
So there's a little kid in Arkansas going to run up to you and throw themselves around you.
Maybe, man, maybe. And, okay. And if we talk about that little kid in Arkansas and roll with it, and, maybe it's a teenager, maybe it's an adult now or something, but you talk about, you know, that you've had an impact when someone hugs you like that, which I love that analogy. It's so beautiful. What kind of thing do you think that you would have done to that person or provided for that person or helped that person with that would have led to that hug? Like, I know all sorts of people get to be impacted in all sorts of different ways, but what comes up for you? What type of impact do you love making the most?
I'd say, so impact that lasts, right? Impact that's forever. No, the impact that literally will it's permanent. That's for me, that's key, right? Is this person will move forward in life now based on the change that you've helped them come across. And the key word is helped. It's not the change that you imposed on them, but you laid the foundation in front of them, or you gave them, or you laid out the puzzle in front of the kid or the adult or the grandpa. But then the kid actually put the puzzle pieces together and then looks up at you and gives you a giant hug, right? So for me, it's giving the people the tools to change themselves. That's impact, right? And whether that's, and that could be in many different ways, right? It doesn't have to be financially, you know, it could be, with just having a chat with that person and convincing them or helping them convince themselves of a mindset change. It could be giving them, you know, it could be giving a homeless kid that's never had a clean pair of socks before, a clean pair of socks. It could be given, a very poor person in any country clean water for the first time. You know, it could be anything, but it's about giving them the tools, the puzzle pieces. But the most important part is you can't put the puzzle together for them, because then they haven't learned, right? They've watched you do it, and maybe some people might be able to recreate, or maybe they could do half of it because they've watched you do it. But it's so much more impactful to let them do it and guide them through it, but have them do it themselves, because at the end of the day, they'll be so much more proud that they've actually accomplished this themselves, but they know that you were the one who helped them create this. And then they'll give you that giant hug that we all love. And
then it stays forever.
Exactly.
Right?
Because the person's done it constantly. Yeah. The person's done it. They learned, right? It's a permanent new connection in their brain now that they're going to constantly evolve from and bring forward, right? It's how like you learning is exponential, right? But you have to do it yourself. It's like how I was recently, I was listening to another podcast actually, where they were talking about the homeless problem here in LA. And there's a huge homeless problem here in LA for those of you who don't know. And they were explaining how, so they actually have access to all the resources they need. They could dial a number, someone will come pick them up, put them in a home, give them food, no problem. They have mental health workers, doctors, anything that they need is there, but they don't want it, right? And because they don't want it, they don't change. So you have to convince the person to want it, but at the end of the day, that person needs to make the decision for themselves and have that drive from within themselves to put that puzzle together. So as long as you give them the puzzle pieces and you convince them that they want to do it, you talk to them and be like, this is something you want to do. And they accept that. And from deeply within their heart, they actually want to put that puzzle together. They will. And once they will have learned, and then they will change. And that's impact.
I love that model. And that's kind of the way me and the rest of my team approached Future You, which was a TED-style events company that did talks for high school students on designing a meaningful life. And we brought together a range of speakers that all built lives around what they loved, right? And the point of that was to give these students, almost like Willy Wonka and the Chocolate Factory, give them a golden ticket, kickstart them on this journey. And the journey was a journey of letting go of the rules, letting go of the norms, and having them realize for themselves that they can, as I just say it the way I say in the video, that you can build your life around what you love. And it's not for everyone, right? People really do need to take ownership, and we want to empower them to take that ownership and provide them with some stuff. But ultimately, it's up to them. And for the people that want to put the puzzle pieces together, we'll offer them further support. And for the people that really want to do it, we'll be there for them. But ultimately, it's up to them. Yet the cool way that model works is that maybe it's 5% of the people that really, really get impacted. I mean, our survey showed, most people felt impacted in some way. But in terms of people that actually did something about it, say it was 5%, well, those 5% of people go out and build lives around what they love, and whatever that looks like for them. Well, then that kind of slowly shifts the norm. And then the norm becomes build a life around what you love. And then people don't even have to go through this puzzle piece thing in the first place, because that's just the way the world becomes. So for me, I guess my life, that's Future You, and that's still going on. And I felt like it was time for me to move out of that to really focus on this love-based and community-based stuff, which I'm still looking at what that means. But for me, I feel like fulfillment at a deep level comes more from relationships than it does from career. But yeah, that's
awesome, dude. Well, I mean, I'll throw it back at you. I know you kind of just answered it based on my answer, because our brains are pretty intertwined, so we think the same way. But I'll throw it back at you. What does impact look like for you? Like if you close your eyes right now and you take in a deep breath and you let everything go, and you just ask yourself, what does impact look to you? What in your head, what is the image that pops up? What is the sound that comes into your head if there's a sound? What is the sensation that you feel? What is describe to us in the best way you can what that feeling is, what that vision is, what that sound is for you?
Say a person has a thought and they're going to do something and they have a thought. And you take that thought back to where that thought came from. And you take that thought back to where that came from. And that came from a feeling. And that came from an experience. And that came from another thought. What impact is for me is when you take it back deeper and deeper and deeper and deeper until it can be taken back no further. That where you end up at is a place where the underlying assumptions are one of connection and community over separation, and ones of assuming love over fear.
Love that, dude. Wow. Crazy. See, and that's exactly what you just did. You dug deep. And I think you want to go deeper here. Sorry to cut you off.
Yeah, I find it so funny that you asked me to take a breath, close my eyes, take a breath, and then answer a question, because earlier on, I kind of felt prompted to do literally the exact same thing with you. So
Nice.
as we've been going through, I'm still learning how to process between the flow of like rolling with the conversation and then, I feel like I want to ask this question and the vibe of it and how it ebbs and flows. But one of the things I had that I wanted to ask you that I've written down is I want you to close your eyes.
Sweet.
And
close.
take a deep breath in. Breathe out so loud that we can hear it. And keep your eyes closed. And I want you to think of what is the earliest memory that you can think of in your life. And it's okay if you want to just sit on that for a little while, feel into it. It may not pop up immediately, but when you're ready, I want you to share what's the earliest memory that came to mind.
Oh man, I'm just trying to filter out all the memories I have based on pictures I've seen, because I feel like those aren't necessarily true memories. I feel like that's your brain like filling in gaps. Like I know that when on my first birthday, I stuffed my face in the cake and like it was all over my face and like it was a big thing and there's just pictures about it and I could picture myself in that high chair right now smashing my face into a chocolate cake, but I don't genuinely believe I remember that. I believe my brain is just filling the gap after I saw a picture. But if I really crunch and I think back to the earliest memory I have is I'm with my oh man. Oh yeah, that was a fun one. I was probably 4 years old. I was in preschool. And I'm with my best friend at the time. His name is Tristan. And we're in his house and we're listening to Candyman by Aqua. I don't know if you're familiar with that song. And we're just running around in circles around like the bench they have in their living room for no apparent reason, flailing our hands around, just like loving this song and just running around in circles, listening to it on repeat all day long as his mom sits there in the corner with a book and just smirks. And this is a memory because I could remember it in detail. But yeah, I guess that is the earliest memory that I have that's not based on images I've seen before.
Oh, that's so cool.
It's so
I love
odd.
it.
It's such an interesting memory.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's probably, you're right. Go ahead.
I was just going to say music. I've become intrigued by music lately because this month I've kind of come up with a set of rules I'm following to pursue things that might be viewed as more conventionally boring as opposed to getting hits of instant gratification. And one of my rules with myself has been I'm only allowed to listen to music when either someone else puts it on or when there's nothing else I'm doing at that point in time. So for me this month, whenever I listen to music, it's basically meant I'm sitting down, maybe on my bed, maybe on the couch, most of the time closing my eyes, some of the time keeping my eyes open, and listening to songs. And I've noticed so much more depth than I'd ever previously imagined. Yeah.
Yeah. Music is special. It definitely is. And there's different ways to approach it. Yeah, I know what you're talking about, but I get that feeling when I'm a little euphoric, if you know what I mean. I know we're not supposed to discuss that, but I think the feeling I get, what you're describing now, is I get when I'm just under the influence of some substances. There's certain music I listen to, and it just flows through me, like literally flows through me. It's crazy.
Yeah. I'm really intrigued by music. My brother really loves music, and some of the time we've played card games and I'll put on a certain song, a certain artist. I think it was Coldplay. We're playing a game that I used to love playing growing up called Dutch Blitz, and I put on Coldplay, and then he suddenly started doing really, really, really badly. And he was like, sorry, man, the music just impacted me too much. So I was like, wow, I didn't realize people could be that impacted.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. Dude, the best example of this, actually, and there's a lot of research on this, and you can look this up. casinos play a certain type of music on purpose because it entices you to spend more money. Same with smell. There's a certain smell that they'll actually put in the ventilation system or whatever, and that smell will make you want to spend money, which is insane to think about. That like they literally it takes advantage of basic human instinct to and music is one of the biggest parts of that. And in another way, there's also studies, and I think my little sister did a science fair project on this in like elementary school or something. But when you play certain music in front of plants, for example, it changes how the plant grows, right? And so music definitely is something that at the core is connected to all types of life. And I think that's why humans love music so much. That's why thousands of people will literally cram together, shoulder to shoulder at a festival to listen and to interpret and to feel, right? You literally feel the music. Like people always say that, and I just said it before, you feel it. It flows through you. You become one with it. And that's what dancing is. Dancing is literally just being one with the music, right? And letting your body react to it. That's what dancing is. It's such a natural part of life.
So cool. I literally didn't expect to end up speaking about this, and it's something that but that's how I wanted this to go, right? I didn't want to know everything, and I never felt like I fully grasped music, but I feel like I'm starting to understand it more and why people love it deeply. Yeah.
You should try dancing. Like, try to learn some sort of a routine or something, because when you learn to dance, you pay attention to the music in ways that you haven't paid attention to it before. And it actually changes you completely, because you become so on beat, literally on beat, right? You're dancing to the beat of the music that it goes from me sitting here listening to music to me and the music becoming one thing and working together.
Wow. Oh, dude, I love it. And to turn it into more of a metaphor, I think part of the reason why people love music is because language is an invented construct, right? And it can only define so much. And some of the time, it's nice to have things that go beyond that. So it's the whole phenomenon of how in some languages, they have words where we don't actually have the same word in English, or vice versa. And so their mode of expression is actually limited. And some of the time, it's more of the sounds and the instincts and the feelings that we relate to in terms of even just how we approach life and what feels right and our intuition, and all the way through to the more tangible stuff of like dancing and listening to music. So yeah, man. I'm keen to see. This is another question I wrote down as we were earlier on in our conversation. And if we take this little boy, Edvi, this little boy that just loves listening to music and running around in circles, I'm really curious to see, do you think you'll ever end up falling in love and end up in a deep, committed relationship over a long period of time? It's a big question.
Oh boy. Oh man. Oh boy. It's okay. So actually I'll tell, so I'm going to share with the audience something super personal that I told you in December. I don't know if you remember, but you asked me, I was kind of in like a rough spot. I was adjusting to my new surroundings, because I had just moved out here to LA, and you were asking me probing questions. I don't remember exactly what you were asking me, but the gist of it is, okay, what are your current stresses, problems that you have? Cool. If that wasn't a problem, then what would you still want? Cool. If that wasn't a problem, then what would you still want? And then we eventually just kept going down, no more problems. And when there were no more problems left, no more stresses left, you're like, what is the one thing in your life that you want? And I said, love. And for those of you who don't know me, that's like not something I say.
No, not especially not at your age. Yeah.
Not at my age. And so do I believe that? Yes. But I also believe that I would need someone equally as insane as I am. Because I just live such a spontaneous life that I don't see myself having a traditional relationship. What I mean by that is I don't mean I see myself having an open relationship and sleeping around with tons of people. What I mean by that is, I don't see myself having the traditional relationship of, you fall in love, you move into the same place, you settle down, you see each other at night, you go out on a date once a month, you have kids, you stay in the same city, blah blah blah, die. I see myself having a type of love relationship that travels around, that goes around the world, that changes from one thing to the next. I expect a lot of career changes, a lot of curveballs, and so I find when people look for love, they expect, and usually what you get is stability. I guess I envision for myself the opposite. I want it to be as different as possible, not dysfunctional in a bad way that we're not on good terms, but dysfunctional in a way that together we go on adventures and get out of our comfort zone and just change it up all the time. That's one of the best, I guess a good example I could give of that is there's this family that I think there's the mom, dad, and 2 kids. And the mom, dad had normal jobs and the kids went to school and everything was normal. And then the parents just got sick of it one day and was like, okay, screw this. We're selling everything. We're buying a boat and we're sailing around the world. So literally right now, there's a mom, a dad, and their 2 sons, I believe, just sailing around a boat, just chilling, going around the world. And I see myself doing something more along the lines of that than having like a traditional relationship.
I love that. That's amazing.
Yeah. What about you?
What about me? Oh, gee, I wasn't expecting that. Yeah, 100%, 100%. And I don't know when, and I guess there's part to me that don't want to rush it now because I'm kind of keen to focus on career and not career, but more vision and get my life sorted out and get some form of stability before that does happen. But maybe it won't happen that way. I mean, I'm open to it happening whatever way it can. Yeah, man, like given how much I care about people and relationships and community, I feel like definitely intimate relationships are a big part of that. And it's a part that I was, just had like baggage around and fears around for a long time. And I've broken out of a lot of that lately, a lot of that towards the end of last year. And still have my journey to go on. But no, totally, man. I definitely want to have a really cool relationship and have a family. And I mean, if we're to go deep, like I think I have to be careful as I navigate that because I definitely don't want my family and my kids to go through what my parents went through in terms of the divorce.
Yeah, my parents were divorced too. I feel you with that.
Yeah. Both our moms have gotten remarried, right? Because didn't your mom get married? I saw on Facebook.
Yeah, exactly. I feel like people who have divorced parents are like much, much more cautious. But fun fact, the people who have divorced parents, the probability of them having a divorce is actually higher. So although I feel we're more cautious, we statistically we still end up divorced too.
That's interesting. That's interesting.
Yeah. Haven't figured that one out yet.
I haven't figured that one out yet either. I thought you were going to say the opposite, to be honest. So
no,
who knows? Maybe
it's
patterns.
I don't know. That might be because people who there might be pressure from people whose parents are still together to stick to the norm, and they probably I guess like on that end, on the other end of the spectrum, there's more unhappy relationships where like there should be a divorce, but they don't divorce because of, XYZ reasons, religion, kids, whatever it is. So, if it's the best for both of you, divorce is the way to go. But I am horrified of that concept after seeing what it did to my family, just like you. So I definitely feel you with that.
I'm not worried about it happening. I'm more worried about maybe having a tendency to be overly cautious because I want to avoid that type of mistake.
Yeah, I feel
and
that.
how maybe that could have me not commit when it's actually the right person to commit to. But I'm aware of that. And yeah, I think awareness is kind of the first step. And I feel like I've worked through a bunch of that stuff in the past few years. So we'll see. I'm definitely not going to be doing much dating in the next couple of months, right? With lockdowns.
Dude,
anyway,
we should like put like some sort of timestamp or something. And like, because I mean, like we're like in our early 20s, right? So it's not really expected at all really to be bunkered down in something serious right now, right? But I'm curious to see like 10 years from now, listening to this and doing another podcast, how if in our early 30s we feel more pressure to do something, to actually like, okay, you know what, maybe I do want a wife now, or something like that. I wonder how that changes as you grow older, because I do believe it does, right? Because like if you look at it, I'm pretty sure there's more people married than there are not married who are in their like 40s, I think.
Yeah.
But I'm not sure.
And I'm pretty sure that I read somewhere that once women, especially, I don't know about men, but once they hit 30, their desire to like settle down and just start a family increases. So we'll see. I was actually able to put a timestamp thing on this as a footnote. So I put that in. It says our thoughts on marriage and love, which is really, really cool because it's another thing I wasn't expecting to talk about. But I think so much of this project for me is about letting go, going with the flow, and just seeing. And it's not just about making the other person go deep, but also just having the depth as well and just opening up and being vulnerable myself. And I think that's exciting. I think one of the other ideas that I've kind of played around with for a long time is this idea of a time capsule. And I love collecting moments. I love collecting memories. I've got all sorts of different things I do to do that. I used to be really obsessed with the past and kind of overdo that. Now I feel like I'm not, but it's still kind of fun to do. But I love capturing things in time and being able to look back. And what I'm feeling right now is that a really fun part of this podcast project for me is going to be having conversations with really cool people like you and being able to look back and talk about our lives 5, 10, 15, 20 years and look at, oh man, I wonder what ideas that we spoke about happened. I wonder how the world shifted. So, that's not to say that every conversation has to have that. And I think a lot of the people I talk to I probably won't know too well, but we'll see. And I'm just, I guess, saying out loud that I enjoy that. So,
dude, I love it.
Yeah, man. I'm curious because you mentioned earlier, you're driving along as we started to think about recording this and you knew we were going to record this and you were thinking of what kind of questions I was going to ask you. And the other thing that I had in mind as a segue to this is we're talking about marriage and relationships and how I feel so much about life is it comes down to communication, and I've become better at that. I still have times when I'm a horrible communicator and times when I'm a horrible communicator and don't even realize that I'm being a horrible communicator.
Yeah, you need people to hold you accountable.
Yeah, and given so much of life comes down to communication, I think so many people in their life don't feel heard, and there's things that they want to have a chat about or things they want to talk about that just get trapped inside of them. And then when that can be heard, they have more of a space to do whatever they want from there. So off the back of that, it might not necessarily be that deep at all, and it doesn't need to be, but I just thought that was an interesting segue and a good way to get some of my thoughts on communication out there is what kind of questions or what question or two questions did you most want me to ask you?
Oh, I never even got that far. It was like, because I honestly thought you were going to start with, okay, Steven, introduce yourself. And then like, because I'm an entrepreneur and I have my own business, I was like, oh shit, like this is your elevator pitch, bro. You got to nail this because like people are going to be listening to this, right? So I was like, how do I explain Miles Deal in the easiest way possible? And then like, I shut it down like almost immediately. So I actually never got really deep into it. Like I shut it down and I was like, okay, screw that, go with the flow, let your heart speak, and it's going to be awesome regardless. And so it was really just like I never even got past the introduction, but fun fact, we never even did that. So that goes back to saying, go with the flow. I could have spent, if I would have stressed about it, if I didn't go with the flow, and if I would have thought about it, I could have spent 2 hours drumming up the perfect pitch for my business, thinking you were going to introduce me. You asked me to introduce myself. And then lo and behold, as this conversation went on, or as the conversation started out, we didn't even do that. So I would have wasted all that time for nothing. So it's good that I just went with the flow. It's good that I sometimes got to roll with it.
I didn't even realize that.
Oh, it's okay.
We didn't do introduction. No. Not only is it okay, but I think it's actually completely okay. And I think it's actually wonderful, because what I've been trying to do with this is I don't see this as a normal podcast at all. And like I was telling you, the focus is the conversations, and I haven't fully decided what it's going to look like tangibly in terms of sharing, but I'm just happy having the conversations for the fun of it. Like, this isn't some sort of normal podcast with just like super high profile guests or experts in the field, although I would definitely consider you a high profile guest.
Oh, sweet. I appreciate that. Thanks.
Yeah, man. Just bumping up your ego a bit, but yeah, it's not about that, and I like, not for the sake of transcending the podcast form just to like be cool or be different, but this is just about what kind of feels interesting to me. And I got thinking at the end of the last podcast episode when something came up in the conversation where it's the first episode, amazing episode, and there was like a slight little thing where I kind of disagreed with the person's philosophy, just a tiny bit. It was like the tiniest little thing in everything he'd mentioned, and then I thought, like, okay, cool. So what is this podcast about? And because I noticed that, I don't know if this would be if it was even noticeable enough to pick up on the recording, but it unsettled me for like just 2-3 seconds. And I got to the end of it and I thought, okay, so what is this about, and what are the values? And one of the values that came out was it's not about what's right and what's wrong, and it's not about here's the right way to live, and let's go and speak to all the people that know the right way to live and optimize their life. It's so much of it is just about listening and hearing and understanding, and providing people that opportunity to share things and to feel understood. So I was like, all right, cool. That's actually fine. And I don't need to, sure, if I wanted to, I can get into a discussion to understand that more, but it's not about kind of like, oh, this person has the wrong view here. And for anyone out of curiosity, we were just talking about whether you should prioritize a backup plan in life, and as opposed to going all in. So anyway, and then the other thing that came up off the back of that was like, okay, cool. What other values are there? And one of the things I did kind of vaguely think about was, what is it going to look like in terms of my guests, and like, how do I identify them? Because am I identifying them as, okay, this person lives in this country, or am I identifying them as, okay, this person has this age or this skin color, or this is their job? Like, I really kind of wanted to go beyond the normal pitches, the normal automatic, I ask this question and this is the default response, and have something that has people think a bit more. I think that's why I love the fact that you made me take a breath and slow down and pause and think before I answer the question. And yeah.
I learned that stuff from you. That's the craziest part. 1 year ago, I wouldn't have told you that, but you introduced me to these concepts and these exercises, and I just like Uno reverse card, just like put that down on the table and just turned it back to you. But the reason I do it is because I know how powerful it is. But the craziest parts of it is I don't think about this in advance. It just in the moment. And same with the 3-3-3 concept that we kind of jointly came up with. For context, for those listening, Andrew and I were discussing learning, and
over text too, even a phone conversation.
Yeah, over text. And so I kind of just got this random idea where I was like, okay, tell me this. Because Andrew and I just like to challenge each other with these difficult questions sometimes that really work your brain. And I encourage you guys to do the same, because it allows you to think, right? It's like a critical thinking, problem solving type of thing. So, I asked him, what is the most impactful thing, or what are the 3 most impactful things that you've learned in the last 3 years? And Andrew wrote me a list. Cool. Now, what are the 3 most impactful things that you learned in the last 3 months? And Andrew wrote down his list. Cool. Now, what are the 3 most impactful things that happened in the last 3 days? And Andrew wrote me a list. And I was like, sweet. And now look at where you are today and compare these things that you've learned. And the concept, the idea of the whole thing was to see just one, accept how much you learn, see how much you learn from day to day. Like every day there's always something new to learn. There's no part in your life where even if you feel like you're in a rut, you're still learning every single day and you're still growing as a human. You're still progressing forward. But also it was to look at, from the experiences from years ago that you brought forward with you today, how did that impact in the direction of where you are now? And how did those concepts impact what you learned 3 days ago, right? And it still needs some tweaking. It's not perfect yet. We don't even have a name for it or anything. So we kind of just roll with the whole 3-3-3. But it's just stuff like that I love. And what I love about this podcast so much, and I touched on it, I think at the beginning, was it's like a phone call. You know, it doesn't feel like a podcast. It feels like I'm just talking to you on the phone regularly. And for when you do this with strangers you've never met or people that, you know, you're not acquainted to as much as you are with me, I strongly believe it's going to feel like just like you're talking to Drew on the street. You know, it's not going to have that formal Q&A style type of thing. It's just going to be raw emotion. And that's what it should be.
Beautiful. Dude, I need to say, and I've only just realized this as you were talking about the 3-3-3 thing again, that this past week has been massively impactful for my life as I've finally kind of committed to what I was resisting committing to, which was really managing just how addicted I was for a period of time to instant gratification and my phone and the news and all that, especially with coronavirus happening. And a big part of what drove that was actually reflecting when you told me that the motivation or what made you come up with that list of, you know, the 3 things for years, months, and days was actually trying to look at commonalities and what's changed and what's remained the same. And for me, when you mentioned that additional question, it made me think about how being in a deep state and how managing my instant gratification and my desire for it has been one of the biggest underlying things that's impacted my life over the past few years, in a good or bad way, depending on how I've approached it. So thanks for that. And earlier, man, you were talking about impact and you were talking about what it means and how you can tell when you've really impacted someone's life and just the desire to give someone a nice big hug. Dude, I remember when the last time I ever saw you, which is like maybe 10 months ago, actually maybe even 11 months ago now.
It was in May, man. Yeah, it's almost been a year. It's almost been a year since we met, and it's almost been a year since we've seen each other.
Yeah. Oh, and I remember you, I was kind of crying. I was a bit upset, and you're doing the hand signal I came up with that signals bring people together and bring the world together. And you did that. Yeah. And man, that was really cool. And I'm definitely giving you a big, warm virtual hug right now. But yeah, man.
Oh, yeah, I feel it, bro.
The other thing you're talking about is having a permanent impact and how you want to not create just a short-lived temporary impact, but you want to create a permanent impact. Well, dude, I can definitely tell you wholeheartedly that you definitely had a permanent impact on my life already. And, you know, I'm sure we're going to stay connected and I can't wait to see you again. But
dude, we will see each other again.
You came into my life at 100%. You came into my life at such a beautiful point in time. Or such a beautiful is probably the wrong word because it wasn't beautiful when you came into it. It's kind of
came in at the perfect time. How's that? I came in at the perfect time.
You came in at the perfect time.
Yeah.
You came in at what might have been one of the hardest periods of my life ever. And one of the times I was most struggling and kind of forgetting who I was. And yeah, man. So thanks for that.
Dude, it's my pleasure. And like you've changed me, and I know right back at you, like for real. Like I and there's things I point to, and I talk about it with my roommates and my other friends, and I'm like, I talk about this with Andrew a lot, and we talked about this, and that's what that changed me. Or people ask me like, how come you have this trait, or why do you believe in this value now, or what changed about you? And a lot of times I talk about our experiences in Montreal when we were hanging out together, and I'm like, yeah, that's where that spawned from. That's when we were together going on all these crazy adventures, or even after those adventures were done, just the conversations we have on the phone, weekly or biweekly, whenever it is, or just the intimate text messages, whatever it is, that's those. I feel like it's exponential too. Like, I've changed you and you changed me permanently, but it doesn't end there. It's not that I've changed you, but we will continue changing each other forever into the future. And that's the best part about it, is it's not like you've changed me once and now we stick with that. It's an evolving process that just keeps going, and we just keep becoming awesome. I'm just going to make up a word, awesomer human beings as we grow older and go forward. And it's just so excited for the memories to come, man. Like, I love thinking about the memories of the past, but what really gets me excited is seeing you again in the future and knowing the memories will
100%. Dude, I don't know what exactly we're going to create in the future. I don't know what it'll look like tangibly, but I know that we're going to end up creating something together. And let's do a TED Talk together at some point, eh? Let's do a TED Talk together.
Dude, that would be so cool. Dude, when that happens, like, you're going to have to do most of the talking because I'll be busy laughing. Just like hysterically laughing, because I'm going to probably think back to this moment about how we talked about it, and I'm just going to think that's hilarious because that's my personality.
Yeah. Cool, man. Final question. I think I've asked you this before. I'm curious to see if it's evolved at all or what it is now. If the world 1,000 years from now was a completely blank canvas, completely blank, like what's happening now is irrelevant and isn't going to alter the world 1,000 years from now at all. And how you lived your life, for however long you end up living, was the biggest factor that influenced how the world looked 1,000 years from now. And you could have it look any way at all because of how you lived your life. How would you like the world to look 1,000 years from now?
Oh, man. It would definitely be a...
Maybe this is another one of those, like, slow down and take a breath questions.
It would be a risky... the way I see it is it would be like kind of like almost like a risky shit show in a way. Because a lot of the people would not be, I guess, not going with the flow would be the new norm. And because of that, everything would just be one big cluster of like randomness. Everyone would be doing what their heart desires instead of following a single path. And I see a lot of chaos, to be honest, but positive chaos, because, negative chaos comes from people judging other people. But positive chaos comes from like, oh, you're doing that? Oh, that's cool. Like, and then, as long as people aren't hurting anyone, which I haven't hurt anyone in in any physical way, and I strive not to with the decisions I make. That is the one thing that I am conscious about, and I'm working on now, is how my actions could impact other people in a negative way, and I try to avoid that as much as possible to avoid causing harm. And as long as you follow that, and people 1,000 years from now follow that, then the way I see it is like, I don't see any sort of institutions, to be honest. It would be like a free-for-all, but like in a good way, a free-for-all that would work, because everyone would kind of be okay with each other. Like, I don't see education systems. I don't see big corporations or institutions, or realistically, I don't even see any government. But I see people just being totally okay with what their neighbors are doing, so long as it doesn't harm other people in any physical or emotional way. I just see people being okay with things and just be like, yeah, that's fine. As long as you're not physically hurting another human, and you then do what your heart desires. And do you need help? How can I help? And I see society working, but I honestly can't imagine really what that would look like. I don't even think I could paint it because I don't think my brain could grasp that concept. Because in today's world, it's so hard to visualize it without all these negative connotations that we have. But I guess if I really dig down and if I really go deep and I really try hard, the one way I could see it is a beautiful world full of nature, full of love, full of life, with just a bunch of smiling humans walking around and just going up to one another and just picking up a conversation with whoever they want and deciding to go on adventures, whether that's, jumping off of waterfalls or going to space, or, colonizing a new planet, whatever it is. I just see people doing it harmoniously without any sort of judgment and without any sort of plan. Just one big go with the flow.
Beautiful, brother. I love it.
If you enjoyed this conversation with Stephen, there's no need to add him on social media. Rather, who in your life is similar to him, or maybe very different from him? If you're up for it, it's now your turn to have a conversation. And if you need someone to connect with, head to hellostranger.fm/connect to get matched with another random listener somewhere in the world. Remember, on the other side of hello, anything is possible. Thanks so much for listening. You can subscribe to Hello Stranger on wherever you get your podcasts. You can also stay in the loop on Instagram at Hello Stranger Podcast. No dots, no dashes. With all that said, here's a preview of my conversation with Anthony, and I'll see you next time.
Have you ever been hurt because of how much you love at a deep level and how much you're open-minded and how much you trust people? And is that something that you're willing to have happen over and over again? And yeah, just what are your thoughts on everything I've shared?
Like, long story short, I think that growing up, I didn't really grow up with my father around because he was in or out of jail like most of the time. And as a kid, you always have a picture of your parents, and then I guess you don't actively seek out the bad in people, especially your parents. But logically looking at it, someone who's in and out of jail has a history of it. They're probably going to go back. But my dad would always tell me, yeah, I'm not going to go back there again. I'm not going to do it. And it would just be time after time that would happen. And as a kid, that hurts. And then I would grow resentment towards it. And that hurt me emotionally. So I'll still be kind of standoffish to this day with my dad, but it's kind of just learning more how to accept who a person is. And that you can't really change everybody. But that was emotionally draining for most of my life.